Welcome to another episode of Thoughts of a Trillionaire and Becoming a Techno Wizard, probably, or something like that. I don't know these days. Today is February 25th, Thursday, 5:11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 17:11, because that's how I was looking at it. And so much to talk about. Oh my goodness. I need to get back to doing these regularly, but I mean, like, I'm just like learning so much these days and really getting into so many things that's been difficult to like pin down some time. Um, Really, I just got to make time for this. I got to make time for a lot of things. Okay. Um, so a couple of things I want to talk about a lot today. It's probably gonna be a long episode, so buckle up. I might put show notes if I upload this on YouTube. I don't know, maybe. But yeah, I want to talk about some African civilization stuff, some climate change stuff, some games, game related game design, capitalism and business. Um, I'm probably going to do a whole other episode with my business idea that I started with the last episode. So tune in for that. I'm not going to do it now because I just have so many things in my head. I won't really be able to. It's like I'm pretty sure it's. I ended up writing almost 20 pages for my business concept. It's not even a full business plan. It's just a concept, right? I was going through everything, why I want to do it, what it looks like, how to do it, all that stuff. And ended up being like 20 plus, almost 20 pages. Cut it down to like 14, 13 pages. But yeah, so that's going to need its own episode for me to talk about that. But I wanted to get all this stuff in my head just out while I'm here, while it's in my head. Well, it's been in my head for the last couple of days. That's why I wanted to get it out. And if I start just jumping into that, I'm going to be thinking about all the stuff I want to talk about. And then I want to make a whole other episode for just other stuff. Like I want to start making videos about ancient Africa, about climate change and stuff like that. So this is going to be a good opportunity for me to start talking about that stuff. And I want to make them polished, or at least like just add cool effects, visuals, and all that other stuff. So um, productivity too, because like all this stuff I'm talking about, I want to do. The problem is I need to be able to make more time for it. Right? It's not about I don't have the time. Like half my days, I'm just sitting here just thinking, just like, right. And I'm learning not to be. I'm learning to embrace that. Like I was having a nice value um, creating new values for myself or just updating my values or looking at it again with a friend. Shout out to Austin Wiggins. Talked about him a couple episodes back about he brought up the idea of novelty seeking, being novelty oriented rather than goal oriented. You can go check that out if you want to learn more. But he brought up this one value that was super interesting. All of his values really interesting, but this one was really different to me. He said slowness because we've gotten to this idea that we should be go go go, fast everything and keep doing, be hustle, grind, all that other stuff, right? But the problem with that is that that's not how our brains work, right? It takes time for your brain to really capture stuff. Like that's why you have to repeat something multiple times. You have to like what's his name? Huberman, something Huberman. He has this whole he regularly talks about like neurology and psychology and stuff like he's a professor, but he brings a lot of that science into it. He has a YouTube channel talking about all this stuff. And one of them he was talking about is that the best way, the scientifically proven way to learn something, right, is to have like these 90-minute sessions that's according to your ultradian rhythm where you're focused on learning that thing or whatever, and then you take a break, right? You take a I forgot the exact words for it, but basically you take a nap. You got to allow yourself to sleep or to meditate or something for your mind to start actually, you know, um, digesting it to really understand that concept. And we actually see this throughout history, right? All the best thinkers, all the best doers, all the best people throughout history had dedicated times when they just did nothing. They just sat there and meditated or thought or took a nap or walked, right? Where you have these times where you just do nothing and you just take some time to let your mind, you know, um, just take just take things in, take information in. And so I've been doing a lot more of that recently. There's this gnat in my freaking room. This is why like my plant unfortunately died, got overwatered. But it had like gnat fungus in there or whatever you call it. Bunch of gnats in there now. The gnats are still in my room a week later. It's hard to get rid of these things. But anyways, sorry, I get distracted sometimes. This idea of slowness, right, allows you to take some time to really understand concepts. I'm so sorry for the freaking lighting. Why it keep going in and out? Zoom is annoying. That's another thing I want to take some time to do is find a new freaking video, recorder other than Zoom. I just need to upgrade all around. Just need to update my stuff. I got new headphones, new mic. Now I need to get better software. Just steadily upgrading, but we'll get there. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of stuff I want to do, but it's a matter of learning how to take the time to myself. To allow myself to really grasp concepts, to really learn, and then making the time to focus on things, to just enjoy the act of learning. And there's just so much amazing stuff to learn. But anyways, I didn't even want to talk about that. There's a lot of other things to talk about, so let's get into it. So I recently found a YouTuber by the name of From Nothing, the From Nothing YouTube channel. He's talking about, it's a great YouTube channel talking about that, the fact that we didn't come from nothing. We, as in civilization and whole, but more specifically, Black people, right? Africa, where it is today, didn't come from nothing, right? Because that's important to note. Because a lot of times when we whether it's Black people or just other people, right, have an idea of Africa, um, it's not a charitable idea, right? It's oftentimes a very, oh, that's where all the poor people are. That's where all the disease is. That's where all the slavery came from, right? That's pretty much our only real understanding of Africa. Or you can go there for wild animals, for Sahari or whatever, right? And it's unfortunate because we have, and especially in Western civilization, right? We have a huge amount of respect and inspiration that we get from European culture, that we get from Asian culture, right? Most of our fantasy and a lot of even our science fiction centers around these European or Asian cultures. Sometimes you might get a little bit of Indian in there, a little bit of Native American, you know, so on and so forth. But you almost never get anything from Africa. And people will tell you, oh, it's because Africa doesn't have nothing, right? Oh, because Africa is poor, or Africa has always been like that. No, that's the problem, right? We didn't come from nothing. And this is something that hits close to home, not just because I'm Black, but because there's so much rich history there, right? Like I gained a respect for history and a really a love for history when I started to learn about it, not in the terms of dates and all this stuff, but in terms of stories, in terms of amazing things that has happened throughout history, and amazing examples of human ingenuity, right? Of change, of overcoming challenge, of technology, of all this amazing stuff. You learn so much from history. And when you apply that to your life, to your day-to-day life, right, you can get so inspired. It encourages you to show that, hey, we faced this problem before and we've overcome it, right? It shows you that there's so much. And you all should. I'm pretty sure I talked about that before, right? My calendar and all that. How it's not the year 2000, it's year 12,021, right? It's we just have so much history that we can pull from. And I said this before. I say it again. If you had to put our history into a bank account, right? American history would be if every year is $1, American history will be $400. That's all that's in our account. $400. But if you go into the history of humans since we started creating civilization, well, before we even get into that, let's go to the next one before that, right? Western civilization, starting from the Greeks. That's about 1,000 years, maybe 2,000, depending on if you're looking at ancient Greek, right? That's $2,000 in your bank account. If you look at all of human civilization since we started making cities, right? The Neolithic period, that's a good 14 to 20,000 years. That's $20,000 in your bank account, where we actually can find evidence of people building cities and civilizations 20,000 years ago, right? And you think that's a lot. Okay, like, oh wow, that's amazing. $20,000, 20,000 years, that's longer than most of us even realize that we've started to make civilization. But guess what? African civilization, right? And not just any civilization, but like a cohesive society, a cohesive people, right? Have been in existence for 150,000 years. That's 150,000 years, $150,000 in your bank account of human history that you can pull from, that you can learn from, that you can utilize to do whatever, right? To improve your life. So why don't we see that, right? If I tell you have $150,000 that you can pull from, are you going to sit there and pull from the last $400? Are you going to be okay with just $400? Are you going to be okay with just $2,000? If I say to you, you right now can have access to $150,000. The only catch, right, is that you apply it, that you make use of it. You telling me you're not gonna want to look into that? That's how I see history. That's why I think it's so important for us to really start learning things. And so that that channel From Nothing has some great videos, and I'm gonna start doing like maybe reactions or something. I don't know, or just made my own versions of that sort of stuff. But there was actually a Project Africa series going on with YouTube historians of history channels on YouTube talking about African history. You can go look it up right now. Project Africa. It starts, and the first one really killed. Like, oh my gosh, I was gonna say killed me, but like, it was amazing. It really inspired me. Rather, it's called "Who Are the San Bushmen?" The world's oldest people on the channel Cogito. Cogito? I don't know. Cogito? Cogito or Girl Sun, I think so. I think it's Cogito. But yeah. Who are the San Bushmen? The world's oldest people. And yeah. So their civilization split off from humans as humans, Homo sapiens started, branching out of Africa starting around 250,000 years ago and going down from there. The San people, Khoisan, what people disparagingly call the Bushmen or the Hottentot. Terrible. But the San people have been having their own civilization for 150,000 years in the arid wastelands of Africa. Wastelands, as in, it's very tough for things to grow there. Like it's not like a savanna, right? It's like what you imagine Australia is like, right? With not just deserts, but like arid desert with like cracked, floors and like withered looking, trees or whatever. Cactus growing everywhere. Not just cactus, but like just look it up. You'll see what I mean. But it's a tough place. It's a tough place to live. And yet these people have lived there for 150,000 years. And because of that, right, they're the most genetically diverse. And what that means is that they're genetically more robust as a people. They had less disease, right? They said you can go into the video for details about it, but just go look it up because oh my gosh, it's amazing. But my point is that if that civilization has been stable for 150,000 years, why are we not learning from them? It seems crazy to me, right? Because our Western civilization has only been in existence for about a couple hundred years. Our modern day, society has been in existence for a couple of decades, maybe 100 years, 200 years, depending on if you're counting up from the Industrial Revolution, right? And yet already we're we're coming up against a very weird, very real problem of possible extinction. That doesn't seem like a successful society. That doesn't seem like a sustainable system, right? Like, for all the amazing things that we have, the fact that you can see me today, on this call, on this video, is amazing. Don't get me wrong. But if that comes at the cost of our extinction, if that comes at the cost of worldwide depression, loneliness, poverty, disease, and sooner rather than later, climate change, and the worst parts of climate change, like mass flooding and wildfires and cold snaps and all this other stuff, that we see going on today, and people are saying going to get worse. I don't think that means I don't think that makes our society better. And that's hard to say. That's hard to admit. For a person that loves technology, for a person that loves modern technology too, that's hard to say. But facts are facts. Like, if our way of life is self-destructive, if we can't even exist a scant 100 years, you know, while other humans have existed for 150,000 years, that doesn't seem like we doing right. There's another way to look at it, because I think it's something that people need to visualize and internalize and identify with. If you got $100 in your bank account and you had no way of making more than $100 or whatever, or $200, would you feel successful? Would you feel like you know how to manage your money? That hits home, right? I hope so, because I know for me, it sucks being broke. It sucks being broke. Trying to make more than $100, trying to make more than $10 an hour, right? It sucks. It's hard. But if these other people have a way to bring their bank account up to $100,000, you're gonna be like, what are they doing? That's how I see it. If our civilization is gonna come to an end in the next couple of decades because of whatever systems that we have in place, then you have to ask yourself, what did those other people do to last so long? All right. So a couple of things on that. A lot of African civilizations use fractal patterns. There's a book by Egash, Ron Egash, called African Fractals. Look up the video. He did a TED Talk back in like 2007, and has since been trying to use this idea of African fractals to help teach people math and all this other stuff. But for me, I really want to see how to use that as a way of creating better systems and societies, because a lot of these African civilizations have existed for over 1,000 years before they were hit by the Westerners, by the Europeans that came in and colonized them, and of course infighting too. I'm going to get to that, but like the Mali people, the Edo Empire, Kingdom of Kush, Great Zimbabwe. All of these civilizations have existed for at least 1,000 years, at least. You can look it up. It's crazy, right? America has only been in existence for 400 years, and we're already at the end of democracy, the end of capitalism, blah, 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 right? Yes, we've accomplished so much, we've created so much, but at what cost? If our civilization ends after a couple hundred years, are we really better than the ones that have been in existence for over 1,000? It's important to look at these costs, people, of our technology and of our societal systems, because it just doesn't make sense. If we want our kids to live in a world that's better than what we experience, if we want our grandkids, if even us want to be selfish about it, like if you want to live in a better world, right? I want to live in a better. I'm selfish too, right? I want to go to the moon. I want to go to space. I want to have deep dive VR. I want to, experience all that reality and that society and that human imagination has to offer me. I want to meet amazing people. I want to go out and explore the world and see, all these amazing things that we've built. I want to explore nature. I want to see, the depths of the Amazon. What's in there? Like what those crazy little, frogs look like in person. I know they're poisonous, but I want to see them. Right? I really, there's so much I want to explore. I want to see what's at the bottoms of the ocean. Do we have like a real life kraken? They say, these giant squids are real. So let me see them. I want to see them octopus scrambling across the ocean floor, making little houses with shells. I'm tired of seeing it just videos. I want to see it. I want to experience that. But will we ever get to that point? Will I be able to do that? If I have to worry about, you know, keeping the lights on and, feeding myself and my family, making sure everybody's mentally healthy and all that other stuff. If I have to worry about these basic needs day after day, how is that going to allow me to explore the ends of the universe, to explore, everything that my mind and your minds and nature and whatever has to offer? It's unsustainable. It's a bad deal, right? So these African societies had something going. So let's get into why they fail, right? Right, why they fell. What happened? Like it can't be that good, right? You might be thinking that. Some part of me is thinking that, right? Can't be that good if they didn't come up with like guns and stuff like that. If they couldn't defend themselves against Europeans that had better weapons, can it be that good, right? There's some videos that I want to watch that goes into that exact thing, like guns. It was where is it? Which video is it? Guns, disease, and slavery or something like that. Guns, germs, and steel. Let's say African history disproves guns, germs, and steel. So I don't know what's that about, but I'm about to watch it. Not right now, but I want to theorize first because that's how you. I think that's a good way of learning. And the next video, I want to go back over and see if I was right or wrong. But my idea so far is that like it was initially, I did have some ideas of because they had better weaponry and they had diseases that the African people never really had to deal with, and that was really problematic and stuff like that. But I think it goes a step beyond that, right? And this is going to get into some territory that I think people are a little bit afraid of, but it has to be said. So a lot of these societies with African civilizations, they were very stable, right? Obviously, it lasted so long. But the problem with stability is that it becomes difficult to, you know, at least in my mind, it becomes difficult to adapt to other things. But again, maybe not, because the whole point of being stable over a long period of time is that you've learned to adapt to different things, right? And you're always able to come back to your state of balance. Um, so maybe not. But I think it's more of about an idea of like stability in terms of trust, in terms of the rules of society, right? How you understand things to go. And a lot of African societies, a lot of really most indigenous societies, right? Native Americans have the same idea. Um, and I think some Asian ones too before feudalism and stuff like that. But they had the idea of like, you don't own the land, right? This might be your territory, but that's just where you are right now, right? And so you're not gonna you're not gonna sit there and try to extract a whole bunch of resources from that land. Sure, you're gonna get some of it. Like they had tons of gold mines and salt mines and stuff like that. But whenever somebody else was like, "Oh, I want that gold mine, I want that salt mine," they did. They went to war. Of course, there was wars, just like any other people. But they still had an understanding. They had an understanding about that when when we go to war for that land, right? We fight with our best warriors to show our skill. They had all sorts of warrior classes and types of types of fighting. A lot of that which has been lost. A lot of unique types of weapons. Look that up as well. African weapons are very unique and diverse. Um, but they had these, often had these warfares, and they fought with different types of skill and stuff like that. And once you won, right, you enslaved the other culture, or you annexed them and turned them into your culture. But again, we had an understanding that there was no ownership necessarily, right? Like just because I enslaved you doesn't mean like you're all beholden to me. No, it's slave. This is why it's important to make that distinction. Yes, don't get me wrong, all slavery is bad. However, you have to make this under distinction, just like there's a difference between a gun and a bomb, right? There's a difference between a frag grenade and a nuclear bomb, right? There's a difference between slavery, where you were actually still a part of the civilization. You can still vote. You can still, partake in most parts of society. But your contributions went towards the new society. It didn't go towards your old society. And that was because it was a matter of assimilation, right? Um, and I haven't went deep into this, so I can't say it's for sure. This is just, my current theory so far. But yeah, so you had this type of slavery, and it's different than the other type, which is uh, chattel slavery, whatever you want to call it, right? The European brought this idea of you can own another human being, and that human being is no longer a human being; they're an animal, right? They're that dehumanization aspect was very pernicious and very, I'm not gonna lie, very effective idea. And so that created a moment where you can own these people just like you would own, or like the Europeans would own, like an animal. And because a lot of Africans, a lot of indigenous cultures didn't have this idea, right? You didn't actually own an animal. You didn't own, the land. You just used it, and it went back. After you use it, it went back to the land, right? It was a cycle. It had a cyclical thinking. But, the kind of European way of thinking, and now, of course, I'm overgeneralizing this. Some people had, different variations, but based on history, what we can see, it's kind of a linear thinking of a binary thinking. It's like you're either owned or not owned. right? You either um, good or bad. You're this or that, right? And this binary thinking makes it so that when you own somebody, they're no longer human because a human, right, cannot be owned. See where I'm going here with this? So it creates an incentive to dehumanize your slaves, to dehumanize, nature, to dehumanize a lot of things, because with that binary kind of thought, that binary idea, it's either right or wrong, right? And you're on the right because it's your society, it's your family that you're protecting, it's your family that you're feeding, it's your, culture that you're trying to grow. And so everybody else outside of that culture is by default wrong or, bad or barbaric or inhuman, right? And you see this throughout history. Like this is a crazy place. It might sound a little crazy because a lot of us are, know that's not quite the truth. And granted, people didn't, say this exactly like that, but I like to keep it transparent, keep it, simple, because it does come down to these simple ideas. And this is most likely the case because this is the whole idea of race, right? This is the whole idea. African civilizations did not have an idea of race. They did not have an idea of ethnicity, right? It was just where you came from, like what people that you identified with, who you ran with, who you hunted with, who you ate with, right? And you were just the people. Like almost every African civilization, their the name for themselves can be translated to just the people. That's it, right? um, and a lot of Eurocentric ideas has this idea that of othering, of xenophobia, of, you could say, supremacy, right? Where it's I am this type of person, and anybody that's not me is a lesser type of person, right? And a lot of other indigenous cultures have this identity where you can be indoctrinated into the culture, right? You can become more one of the people just by doing what they do, just by living their life, right? If you hunt with them, if you eat with them, if you pray with them, whatever, not pray, but like they have their own ceremonies. But if you do all that with them, you become part of their culture. It's simple as that. That's how you become the people. It's not about where you were born or what you look like. It's about, do you do what we do? It's about something that you do, not something that you inherently are, because you don't own what you look like. You don't own the land. You don't own, anything. You're just existing here with everybody else. So it's a matter of what you do that determines, who you are, that determines your culture, that determines so much of our societies. At least that's how I'm understanding it so far. I mean, I'm not saying this to like necessarily villainize, European culture. There's a lot of European culture that I really like myself. It's to understand. It's to understand how this happened. Because if we don't understand how this happened, we're bound to repeat it. If we get out of, the problems that we have now, like if we don't sit down and think about, okay, how did this happen? Like what ideas led to where we are now? If we don't figure that out, then even if we do solve this problem somehow that we're coming up against to solve human extinction, even if we do solve that problem, we're going to just end up repeating the same mistakes. And you see that throughout history. Like anytime a group of people do not learn from what another group of people have already experienced or what the same group of people have experienced a couple generations back, they just end up doing the same thing. You're like, what? Why? You just did the same thing. Like if you read history, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of occasions with this. I've already come way off topic to what I actually wanted to talk about, but this is why I like doing these sorts of things. Maybe help me flush my thoughts out of my head. So yeah, that's one kind of theory I have for how that happened. And so because you have these binary ideas of good or bad, or human or not human, or better or worse, or better or, whatever, then when they came and, asked the Africans, oh, you got a lot of gold there, right? Can we trade with the gold? They thought they had to get ownership of that gold, ownership of the land that these people lived on, and so that they can extract, because they thought they were the right to extract. Like, this is actual quote from I'm terrible with names. This is why I need to do an actual video where I have people's names and all that other stuff, sources, citations for you. But you can look it up right now so far if you're listening this far into it. But they said the earth is like a machine, right? Actually just seen this from a documentary by Naomi Klein. Yeah, Naomi Klein, This Changes Everything. Look up that movie, that documentary is really great. But before, for most of human history, a lot of people had this idea that we are caretakers of the land, or we are, living on the land as a part of a cycle, just like every other animal, right? We're just a part of the cycle, part of the process. But this binary thinking, this supremacist thinking, got us into this idea that the earth and everything on it is a machine for us to built for us to do our bidding, and you can even extend that out to the shepherd idea, right? From Christianity, the idea that we are shepherds of the land or shepherds of the creatures on this land or whatever. That still has the same kind of dominating idea that we are above rather than within. And because of that, it becomes a downward cycle of extraction, of domination, of thinking that we can keep, just doing whatever we want because it's about us. It's about everything here is for us, right? To use. That idea is inherently limited. It's inherently short-sighted, because we know for a fact that there is this is it's not limitless, right? It's not infinite. It's a limited, finite amount of resources that you can use. So if you have an idea that says everything here is for me to use, right? The whole purpose of life is for me to enjoy life however I want, right? If you have the idea of just like you at the top and everything else below you, then it's only a matter of time that you're going to be disappointed. Not only disappointed, but it's a matter of time that you're going to want more. So it's a constant cycle of wanting more, of extracting more, of, doing more so that you can extract as much as you can from that environment. And it's only a matter of time before that environment collapses, before there is no more, before it's depleted. And so let's look at this from another viewpoint. Every animal, almost every animal, especially pretty much every animal, right, can grow unchecked. If you put a plant, this is why we often see like things like kudzu, right? Or there's too many deer, or they say there's too many animals, or too many whatever, right? In a certain ecosystem. Because somebody brought a plant or animal or insect that was in one ecosystem and they brought it to this one. And then it over proliferated, takes over everything, starts killing off all the other stuff, right? Because in that ecosystem which it evolved in, it was a natural balance. It was a natural checks and balance system, just like our government was supposed to be like, right? It's a natural checks and balance. So that if you grow too much, right, you can't grow too much, first of all, because you have a predator. that will that is is preying on your species or whatever. Or if you don't have a typical predator, maybe your growth is capped by the amount of resources available, right? Like you can't grow too much because there's only so many prey. And if you eat all that prey up, your species will die. It will, right? And maybe it won't die instantly, but it will, because what typically happens in nature is that when there's a shortage of food, you can't reproduce as much, right? You reproduce less, and so it naturally, right, comes back into balance, right? Because the predators um, reproduce less, and that gives time for the prey to reproduce more. This is not a, at least to as far as we know, right? As far as we can tell, if you're not a follower of Gaia or anything like that, this is not a sentient process. This is kind of self-checking, right? It's just a system that has evolved into that. Um, but we as a species, as an animal, we have gotten to a point where we could take ourselves out of any environment, where we evolved in one environment, and then we can move to another environment and grow, right? We can move to another one and grow. We have the ability to think about, okay, there's not enough resources here for us. There is, um, or it's too extreme here, or whatever, right? We can actually think about the ecosystem and environment that we're in. We can become self-aware. When you become self-aware of your environment, you are now able to take hold of yourself, of your own evolution, of your own adaptation, of your own growth. And so we've done that. We left the environments that we started in Africa. We populated all these other places. And that was all due to our self-awareness, of our ability to think about where we are, what we're doing, spread ideas, communicate, blah, blah, blah. But now, really during that whole process, right? During that process, we still had an idea that we are within the environment. We are just like any other animal, just like any other plant, right? We are part of this ecosystem. We can't take too much, right? This is why hunter-gatherer cultures were so successful. Humans, like we became humanoid, what, 500,000 years ago, a couple 100,000 years ago? Oh no, I'm sorry. Humanoid, as in like bipedal, that was like 2 million years ago, right? Millions of years ago. And the first Homo erectus or something like that, that was a couple 100,000 years ago, I think. I don't know. I'm kind of rusty on my stuff, my timelines. Probably should look it up. But you get my point. For a long time, we had this idea of some level of self-awareness. So when Homo sapiens evolved the neocortex, the ability to think into the future, the ability to make abstract ideas and plans, we could then realize that, hey, this environment is limited. We can't take too much or, consequences. No other animal has that ability. No other animal, as far as we can tell today, right? They some of them know, don't kill the young ones because that's not enough food, right? And they have to grow. I'm not sure if they understand they can grow, but they probably know don't kill the small ones because that's not going to feed you enough, right? And it's more of an instinct rather than actual, conscious thought, as far as we can tell. But when we evolved with our brains, with our neocortex, we had this ability to realize that there was a current state and there was a future state. And in that future state, right, like if we do something now in the current state, it will affect our future state, our future us in the future. And so once we understood that, that allowed us to grow even more. That allowed us to have a better understanding of how to move through our environment. But we've lost track of that. In the current, society, we've lost track of this idea that we can't just grow ad infinitum. This is the problem. And this is what I was going to get into, trying to lead into with my other stuff. But this is the problem with capitalism. It's not that capitalism is inherently bad idea or anything like that, or it's evil or something like that. Some people will tell you that it's evil, stuff like that. I mean, there's some arguments to be had of whether or not it's evil or stuff like that. My problem with it is that it's kind of stupid. It's myopic, right? It's short-sighted. For a long time, we realized that we cannot, and every other animal does this, right? We are part of a balanced ecosystem. We can't just keep extracting. You can't keep growing. This idea that you can grow and grow and grow, and that's a good thing. This idea that you can have progress uh, forever, right? That's not a smart idea. And we should have known this. As a species that calls ourselves sentient, we should be self-aware enough to know that this lighting is really annoying. We should be self-aware enough for us to know that you can't keep growing. You can't keep extracting more. You can't keep preying on the you can't just keep killing everything, right? Because it's going to kill your food source for the future. That's the problem. That's the inherent problem with capitalism, is that it has to end somewhere. And I talked about that in the last video with donut economics. That's what they brought up. The idea that there is a minimum of growth that you need, and there's a maximum amount of growth that you can handle. Once you go beyond that, you go into excess. And we know this as a species, as a people, in our everyday lives, we know that we can't have good things forever, right? We know we can't just have sweets forever. We know we can't eat dessert for breakfast, lunch, and dinner day after day. We know that we can't eat candy day after day every year, right? We know we can't have these things all the time. We know. And yet, that's basically what capitalism is. It's like eating sweets all the time. It's like, oh, we can keep having new things. We can keep making it bigger. We can keep, doing more and more and more. But we can't. We live in a finite ecosystem where things have to replenish. Some things take longer than others to replenish. Coal takes millions of years to replenish. The animals that we're using, it takes less time. A season, a few years. But we've gotten to the point where we're just extracting, getting more and more, eating our sweets day after day. And now look at us. We become fat as a society, slow, constantly have a stomach ache and pain for, all sorts of reasons. So that's the problem with capitalism and with this idea of a binary thinking, this idea that we're above nature. The fact that we even have a word for nature is kind of problematic. The fact that we see ourselves separate from nature, right? Like I said this again in the last video, the fact that we see, these houses, the house we live in, as separate from nature. It's silly. This is all nature. This is all, where you think it comes from? We need to go into some other dimension of whatever, right? It's came from the earth, the environment. And so these are the sorts of ideas that I want to make clear. These are the sorts of realizations that I want people to have, to realize that, we have this ecosystem that we live in. We are an ecosystem, right? And I was watching that documentary, streaming it with other folks in there. One of my folks in the Discord said this amazing thing. She was like, another thing that grows so much that it kills the host is a parasite. And we have this idea, we call ourselves a parasite in movies and stuff like that, a virus, which is so silly. Like, silly in the fact that, like, we know this of ourselves, like we know our fault, and yet we're still doing it. That's just ridiculous. But yeah, just like a virus in your body, what does your body do when you have a virus, right? It overheats. It raises the temperature. It says, hey, there's something here that shouldn't be here, or it's taking too much resources, whatever. So I'm gonna flush it out. I'm gonna raise the body temperature, right? Your body temperature raises, and the hope is that it can kill off those viruses before the body dies. That's the hope. That's the whole point. And that's what the Earth is doing. It's kind of, I'm not really a believer in Gaia, the whole Gaia thing, but it's kind of cool. It's right on the money, you know? So it's just interesting to think that we're supposed to be sentient. We're supposed to be so smart as a species, and yet we've created for ourselves a system that will lead to our own extinction. We created a system, if not our extinction, at least it will be unsustainable, right? At the very least, it has created mass amounts of inequality. And yes, it has created that because before, these, once again, the San people, they had a perfectly egalitarian society. The men and the women are on the same playing field. Even though they did have distinct gender roles, right? The men went to hunt and the women was gathered. But one was not better than the other. Like in their culture, they could get married and get divorced, right? No social consequences. Talk about progressive, right? Like a woman could divorce from a man if they were abusive or annoying, right? If they weren't a good fit for each other, you're like, all right, it's over. This idea, once again, of this marriage together until you die is that binary thinking that we either together or separate, right? If you're together, then we have to be together forever, right? It's just doesn't make sense. That's not how nature works. That's not how we work. If it was, then we wouldn't have so many problems, trying to figure out is marriage good, right? Is marriage a good thing? Is whatever. I'm not going to get into all that, but the point is that we have a very unsustainable society. So you might be thinking what I was thinking earlier is that if we have a stable society like the Khoisan, like the San people, what about technology? Because the fact that once again I can make this video and you can see me in whatever time that you're seeing this video is amazing. I don't think the San people would ever have invented this, not because they couldn't, but because it just didn't come to that point. And so there's a lot of this now, like we're going to the moon soon. We're going to be able to explore, or soon. I'm going back to the moon soon. Going to Mars, right? I want to be able to explore space. I want to be able to explore your imagination with virtual reality and all that stuff, right? So what about that? What about that stuff about technology? That's amazing, right? Is it? Because what if, and this is going way off the deep end, so prepare for me, all right? Prepare. What if our material reality is itself an illusion? What if these technologies, these material technologies that we're so happy about having is unreal, is pointless? What if we could have had a global consciousness? What if we could have had an internet of consciousness where you can connect directly with somebody's mind through some sort of mind reading, right? Through psychedelics. And I bring that up because across all these cultures, the San people, the Aztecs, the Incas, Native Americans, all these other people, right? Across every single one of these cultures, they had some sort of psychedelic. Again, this is I know where it's if you don't know anything about psychedelics, you're like, what you what look it up. And look up Lex Friedman's podcast on LSDs on psychedelics. That one will inform you, will educate you about the whole point about psychedelics. So just a real quick, just because I know people are very intolerant and just kind of simple minded, but I'm sorry, I don't mean to say it like that, but just real quick, psychedelics, natural psychedelics, the mushrooms, the cactus, whatever, there are, I think, over 100 or 500 times safer than any other drug. Meaning, there is not one case of somebody dying from overdose on psychedelics. Not one case. There may have been people that were into other drugs and then also did it, or people that had, well, let's make that distinction with people for typically, mentally stable. There is some problem. There's some, ideas to be had with people who are suffering from schizophrenia or stuff like that. And I have some ideas as to why, but that's a whole other, thing. But suffice to say, for typically mentally healthy or neurotypical people, right? Psychedelics does not pose any actual risk, which is crazy, right? Because you hear all these crazy things about psychedelics, melt your brain and all this other stuff. But the actual science shows quite the opposite. The actual science shows that this is one of the best, if not the best, natural agent, and really any agent really is actually better than a lot of current day medicine for helping with depression, for helping with anxiety, for helping with PTSD. There's clinical trials going on right now that's going to allow these psychedelics to be used to solve all those problems with no side effects. So you tell me, we had this plant, we had these plants out there that can fix almost any problem in terms of our mental stability and give us access to a whole other type of experience. Like anybody that takes psychedelics, I haven't tried it myself, unfortunately, yet. But anybody that tells you about these experiences will tell you if they had a good trip. They'll tell you that they were able to open themselves. They experienced really incredible stuff. Just say it like that. Like, you just got to go look it up once again. Because I haven't experienced myself, so I can't, go into it. I've experienced a little bit of, extra, I don't know, dimensional kind of thinking just through meditation. But these psychedelics have an incredible, ability to do that. And every single society, one of these ancient civilizations, used it. And that's how they came up with, like the ancient Indians, they came up with oh my gosh, a lot of Hinduism, and those ideas, those shamanic writings and yoga. And yoga is not just like the body, the vinyasa, stuff like that. It's actually a way of like thinking, a way of being, right? They came up with a lot of stuff from these psychedelic experiences. The Native Americans, came up with a lot of their shamanic rituals and ideas from that. The Aztecs and the Incas, they came up with a lot of their mythology and their stories from that, as well as the African societies. And I would wager a lot of the Europeans probably had, psychedelic experiences and then created, religions and all this other stuff. So psychedelic seems to be a inherent and natural, quote unquote, natural way of experiencing beyond our reality. And that's incredible. Because you're telling me, what if we could have had an internet where this is what we're trying to do with the internet today. Like we're building these brain computer interfaces for us to be able to, bring our thoughts into the real world, for us to be able to communicate directly from thought to mind. But what if we could have had that just by taking psychedelics? So all this stuff that we've done in the past couple hundred years seems kind of pointless when you look at it, right? It seems kind of a wasted effort. I don't, like that term of wasted effort, even though I brought that up, because I think that it was a great learning experience, but only if we learned from it, right? Like we had to have that. I mean, I'm not gonna say we had to have it, but the fact that we did have it, there's no going back now. But or maybe there is. I don't know. We'll see. But my point in bringing all that up is not to say, not to make you regret or feel like, oh, this is all pointless, but it's to make you wonder: are we doing the most that we can do to live the life that we want to live? Like, are we actually experiencing progress? Or are we just going backwards? If these people had a way of exploring beyond our reality, beyond this planet, beyond whatever, through psychedelics or meditation or shamanic rituals or whatever, right? If they had a way of doing that without putting the entire earth in this death spiral, are we really civilized here? Are we really, progressive? That's what I want people to think about. Because as we start to solve these problems of climate change, of pollution, of poverty, and all this stuff, we're going to have to ask ourselves, what is our normal? What kind of life do we want to live? Right? Like, if we want to live a life where we just have the life that we have now, but it's without pollution and all this other stuff, it may not be possible. It may not be possible just because the current life that we lived on has only come into existence due to hundreds of years of downward spiral, downward progression of extraction, of pollution, of this entire society that we're living on today is built on the concept that we are above nature, that we are above the environment. And so if you think the only way for you to live a good life is if you live this life, but without pollution and all that stuff, it's not a realistic idea. It's not. That's hard to admit, but it's not. But if I expose you to the idea that maybe, just maybe, you can live a comfortable, fun, enjoyable, meaningful life and still have amazing amount of progress, an amazing amount of novelty, an amazing amount of learning and education and safety and whatever that you want in life, but you had to live like the San people do, like you had to live like the Aztecs did. If I expose you to that idea, then maybe that's realistic. Maybe we can roll back the clock a little bit, like roll back our technology and go down the other path. Just something to consider. I may be wrong, but we know we're wrong right now. I may be wrong on my other idea, but we have a couple 100,000 years of evidence to show that it's probably not wrong. But the way that we live in right now, we can look out the window and we can know that we're wrong. Okay, maybe not look out the window, because that's another problem, right? Is that the problems of our current, and oh man, I want to be able to call. I need to ask her if she wants me to call her out in my podcast. Let me actually send her a message, because she's so awesome. It's like, she said in my Discord community, our whole Western society has gotten into is built upon the idea that we can hide the consequences of our actions. That we can hide the consequences of our actions. That is clearly problematic, right? Like, if you raise your kids, your siblings or whatever, right? If you raise people and say, hey, you can get into trouble, you can do whatever, and I'm not going to punish you. I'm not. You think people are going to be raised right? If people can touch a hot stove and they don't feel pain, even though it still does damage, right? It still will do damage, but you just don't feel it. If you can, you know, hurt some other kid and then run away before, you know, their pain is registered in your eyes, right? Or they don't feel pain or something like that, like, but they're still injured. If you can take a shit, excuse my language, but if you take a crap on the floor and somebody else will come and clean it up for you before you see it, that crap, you still took a crap. That crap still has to go somewhere. But if you don't see it, if you don't see where it goes, if you don't understand that you've injured yourself or injured other people, if you eat sweets every day and you don't feel pain until all of a sudden it all comes crashing down and your body just implodes on you, right? That's the problem. And they may sound like I'm being extra, right? Like an exaggeration, but it's not. I mean, just like literally, we don't see where we poop. Like we take crap in the toilet and then it goes wherever. We know that most of us have no idea where our poop goes. They may seem like a non problem to you, like it's non trivial, but it's actually a really big problem because every other society, they take a poop, you know, whether like this there are actually a lot of cultures like the Mali and the Edo Empire, they had indoor toilets, but they flushed it out themselves with hot water, right? They had indoor toilets. In the same age when the in the medieval ages, that was around the same like 1000, 1300, all that, the whole period, 13,000 to 1600 BC, or, you know, not BC, AD. This is the whole date system is kind of dumb, but you know, during the Middle Ages, a lot of African empires actually had indoor toiletry, whereas places in the UK and Spain, so on and so forth, they did not. So before, where people would just throw the, let me not get into that. But the point is, if you don't know where your stuff is going, then you're not going to be concerned about where it's going, right? About how it's used, how it was extracted. That's the problems of agriculture. That's the problems of thinking yourself above the environment, outside of the ecosystem. So let me get back to where I was going with the psychedelics thing, right? So if we, and you may not believe me with this, because that's the thing. We've gotten ourselves so deep into, you know, the current way of doing things that any other way of doing things seems like it's not real. It's not accurate. It's not ideal, right? But here's some facts for you. All the current day science, almost all of the current day science, is proving that reality, that space and time is not fundamental. Meaning, if you look at, you know, this cup with scientific instruments, you look at what it's made of, you're going to see atoms. And most of those atoms are like, what, 90% vacuum or something like that? Like there's a huge amount of space between these different atoms, even though this feels like a solid cup, right? Our science shows, like we can measure, we can observe the fact that this is mostly empty space. And yet somehow you can see it, I can see it, we can feel it, right? I can't go through it. And if you look at what those atoms are made of you know, the whole nucleus, protons, neutrons, and all that other stuff. If you look into what those are made of, gluons and all that, and then you go all the way down to quarks. And below that, we can't even see. We can't even see with our instruments. But our science and our experiments, we can do experiments that show it's not real. That's the whole thing about quantum physics, is that Well, I don't want to say not real, because that has a whole problematic idea of what is real. But what I mean to say is that it's not measurable with our physical instruments. The whole point of quantum physics is the fact that things don't exist binary in a binary state. Things exist in this state and that state, over there, over here, right? They exist as probabilities. This might happen, this might happen. And it only becomes quote unquote real or really measurable, right, with our physical instruments when we observe it, when we try to measure it. And there's a lot of these scientific, ideas that show us that space and time is not fundamental. When you go to Don Hoffman, or if you look up, what's his name? Chalmers. Chalmers on his idea of consciousness. The idea that the consciousness itself is probably more fundamental than atoms, than the material universe. Our science says this. And now, our computers are saying this. These things that we built out of, physical bits are now starting to show that we might live in a simulation. We're being able to create these games that are becoming so realistic that, like, pretty soon we'll be able to create a simulation. And so we can create a simulation. Doesn't that mean we're in a simulation? And so that is really making us beg the question, are we in a simulation? And what is, if we are, what is above us? What is, outside of us? What's beyond the simulation? And this is my point, right? If our science, our computers, our technology, right, is showing us that our reality is not quote unquote real, that what we see, hear, and taste, touch, and experience is not fundamental. That's the real thing. It's not that it's not real, because your subjective experience is very real because it's what you experience. But the problem and the idea is that it is not all, right? That something that's not mean, when I say not fundamental, what I mean is that what you see is subjective, and somebody else, somewhere else, something else sees or perceives something different. So if you have a fundamental thing, what we really mean by fundamental is objective, right? Like if you look at this cell phone here, right? This seems like it's a fundamental principle. It's an objective reality. This is a cell phone. This is a thing here, right? But in actuality, this is kind of subjective. Like if this comes out of power, if this somebody that looks at this that never seen a cell phone that is not from our society, they might see this as a brick. They might see this as a piece of glass or something. I don't know. Or maybe somebody sees something completely different perspective of wavelengths. So they might see all the photons, the electromagnetic or electro wavelengths, right? The different wavelengths and the infrared and the radio frequencies and all this other stuff, right? They might see all of that. And that's what a cell phone is to them. But if space and time itself is not fundamental, that means some other experience, some other consciousness experiences life, reality as completely different. And so to me, that means that if we want to be a better society, if we want to be a better people, a better experience, then we need to experiment. We need to see what it's like to live a different type of lifestyle where we can explore beyond our reality. And then we will really be able to see what's progress, and then we'll really be able to see what's technology, because technology is not this, it's not computers, it's not tools. To me, technology, and really the definition of kind of technology, is really anything that makes your life better, that makes it easier. Let me see what the actual definition is, because I'll be making my own definitions. uh, the application of scientific knowledge for practical purpose, especially in industry. See, and then you try to say machinery and equipment developed from the application of scientific knowledge, but yeah, engineering, applied sciences. Yeah, even those definitions, right? The application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes has nothing to do with the tools that we use. It has nothing to do with a cup or computer or headphones or this house that we live in. It has nothing to do with these tools. It has to do with, can we and can we apply what we are learning about the world in our everyday life? That's all technology is the ability to apply what we are learning about reality in our everyday life. So psychedelics is technology. So breathing exercises, meditation is technology. See where I'm going with here with this, I hope. So that means that maybe we can get access to way more technology if we put aside this idea that, this is the best that we can come up with for technology. If we put aside this idea that everything we've come up with now is amazing examples of technology, maybe this is extremely primitive. Like if I want to talk to you asynchronously, remotely, maybe I can like put all my thoughts into into not even a virtual, but into a bubble of reality, and I can send that off. If you walk into that bubble of reality, you can experience exactly what I was thinking, feeling, hearing, all that stuff. Maybe that's technology that we should be inventing, that we should be applying. But there's no way, like, just have that. For anybody that's like thinking about technology, that's like, oh, that's magic. That's not technology. That's magic. But what did what's his name, Clark, whatever said, is that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. That's why I call myself a techno wizard, right? Because we have such a limited idea of what technology is today. In reality, that technology might be crafting entire realities. Maybe this is a simulation. Maybe this is somebody's brain. Each of us have different thoughts in that brain. Maybe that was somebody's technology. Now it's not running on some computer somewhere, and so it doesn't have to have an infinite amount of energy. Or maybe it does need energy, but that quote unquote energy is just light, whatever the equivalence of light is in that environment. What if I can leave my thoughts into a bubble right here, just leave it there, and it could subsist on me thinking about it? It can subsist on whenever you experience it. That's what allows it to stay there longer. I don't know. These are crazy ideas, right? You might be thinking, like, what the hell is this man talking about? Like, this is this is insane. My point is that we can very much be hobbling ourselves. We can very much be missing out on the best parts of technology, on the best parts of progress, the best parts of civilization, of society, of experiences, by limiting ourselves to how we currently live life. And I know there's a bias, there's a sunk cost fallacy, that, oh, we put so much into this right now, put so much into this, so much money, so much time, so much pain and effort going into this, how we live life today. We can't just dismiss it, right? We can't just walk away from that. Yes, we can. This is how addicts stay addicted to. This is how, right? When you gamble, you put so much money into that bet, that thing is like, oh, I only have to win. I only have to win once to make all this back. Then you never win. And even if you do win, like the lottery winners, you still get broke, get bankrupt because you didn't actually learn how to manage your money. You didn't actually learn what to do with all that winnings. So even if we do get super successful with technology and able to communicate with each other with brain computer interfaces, we could still fail. We could still go right back to broke. We could still use that for advertising, for IOI. If you've seen Ready Player One, we can use that to like just look at the technology we have today. We already are almost there. We already are closer to that than we have ever been since we started inventing material technology. Since we started living away from using psychedelics to explore reality, right, into using only physical things to explore reality, we have come the closest we've ever been to being able to speak mind to mind. I can post my ideas on Twitter. It's like a hive mind, right? It's amazing. But look at the experience of Twitter. It's not a great experience. Most of us don't have a great experience with Twitter or with Instagram or with any social media, even though this is the amazing tools that we have been thinking about. This amazing ability to communicate with all these other humans and all these other people and have all these ideas connecting. Yes, right? But why does it feel so bad? Because we've won the lottery, but we haven't learned how to manage our money. We've won the lottery, but we don't know how to apply that to our life. And so we're sinking right back down to the depths of poverty where we were before. And that's going to make us feel so much worse. That you have all this potential, but you have no way of actually living that potential. That's the real pain to me. I went way off the tangent to what I wrote down. Like I wrote down some talking points of what I wanted to talk about. I kind of covered most of them. So I ended here. But suffice to say, this is a very big turning point, I think, in our society right now. And we really need to take this time to think about how we can live a better life. If we really, if this is all we have to offer, like, is this really the best that we can come up with as a advanced civilization? Is this really the limits of our technology? We're worried about not being able to make, cheaper computers, better computers, the typical way, going to quantum computers and all this other stuff. And yet we still have the ad based revenue where instead of, we still have, I don't know, should I go? Yeah, I might as well shoot. And for not sunk cost fallacy here, it's just wanted to get my point across. Because there's so many, because I don't know which way is going to resonate with you. So I like to, you know, share it before I forget. But I already forgot. See, so I guess that's the other. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. Like we already have this amazing technology that we have today, but we still have an a mismatch of our incentives, right? Where we have companies that are profit driven, like I said before, they just want growth, 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 growth. But at what cost and for what purpose? The whole point of profit, the whole point of money is to apply it to our lives, is to help us to live the sort of life that we want to live. Typically, that means a better life. That means more fulfillment, self fulfillment. That means being able to, grow and learn and make a meaningful difference in the world. But if we're just getting that money just because more money is good, then it's like saying, oh, we want to lose weight so we can get to a good size, right? Want to have 6 pack, and then we start losing weight, and then we keep losing weight. We get our 6 pack, and then we keep losing weight, and we just keep going. And like, whoa, 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 what? At some point, you become anemic. You become too skinny. And this is a bad way of looking at it, because our problem is the other way around, right? Where we set our goals, we say, hey, I want to bulk up. I want to get like me. I want to bulk up, right? I want to get some nice chest muscles and some biceps and stuff like that, be fit. But if I keep eating, if I keep working out and eating, I don't even just keep adding more pounds, I'm gonna come against some problems, right? Won't be able to fit into my clothes. Won't be able to scratch my own back. If I keep putting on weight, I've lost. Eventually, I might lose the whole point. Like, my point was to gain muscles so I can have some packs or something, right? So I have some chest muscles and some biceps. But if I keep putting on weight, then I'm not gonna go straight past that. I'm gonna have plenty of chest. There's gonna be some man boobs. And if you like that, that's all you. But that's not what I want. And then we get to a point where none of us like it, where we can't even get up out of our seat anymore because we just keep putting on weight. Our blood can't move through our body, right? It's the problems of being morbidly obese when you're 1,000 pounds, you're even 600 pounds or above, right? If you get to that point, you can barely get out of your seat. Your knees, your joints can't can't support your weight. Then we get to a point where it's just like unsustainable. And so that's what we're doing with capitalism, with this growth mindset of corporations. Like, we want profit, we want more. But then we just lost the whole concept of being muscular, being lean, being fit, so we can run or jump or do what we actually wanted to do. Or maybe because I want to put on weight so I can be able to pick up my woman, you know, so I can be able to do some calisthenics, some parkour. I've been 120 pounds since middle school. But if I keep putting on weight and lose that whole idea, then it's like, what's the point? That's what we're doing with capitalism. It's not that the idea itself is evil. And yeah, it's good to put on weight. But if you go into an excess, you have to ask yourself, when do you stop? What's the new goal after that, right? It can't be just profit, profit, profit. Can't triple, double, double. Triple, triple, double, double, I think is the term for it. And then after you IPO, you keep doubling or you keep getting more profit. Like, okay, why are you using all this money? What are you getting all this money for? Because it's an even bigger problem, because after you get to a certain weight, right, you have to do really crazy things for you to get more. You have to eat a stupid amount of food. And you can't be too physically active, because you're going to start losing weight. So a more efficient way to gain more weight is to just sit down and just eat, right? That's the better way. Like, if you're, that's the whole point. That's the whole problem that I'm trying to get you to understand with this metaphor, is that the thing that we use to measure our success, if we that's I forgot what that principle is called. That's a common, one of the many problems with human bias, is that when we begin to, what's the term for it, when we measure something for our success, we use that measurement as the the goal, as a measurement of as the success itself. So whenever the number goes up, we feel better. To loop this all back into, you know, atomic habits and loops, and how the brain works, right? We get a dopamine hit at the anticipate. Let me back up a step. So in order to form a habit, all right, you have a cue, which is what you want, like the trigger, you seeing something. Then you have the craving, the state of that you want. Like, hey, I want this, I want that, I want to feel better, I want this thing, I want whatever. Right? You have the craving. Then you have the action, which is what you actually do. Then you have the reward, right? And so something triggers you to start doing whatever. You have a craving, you do an action to fulfill that craving, then you get a reward, which gives you that dopamine. That dopamine tells your brain, yes, this is good, do more of that. After the first few times, your brain actually gives you the dopamine before you get the reward. The first couple of times, you have to get the reward first, and then you get the dopamine hit. But the other times, your brain starts to realize, oh, you're going to get a reward if you do this thing. So it gives you the dopamine hit at the anticipation of the reward. And that's how you build habits, whether it's good or bad. So bad habits, you keep doing things that even though you know is not actually going to help you, because maybe before you got a dopamine hit when you first did the thing, and then your mind keeps giving you the dopamine when you start when you have that craving to do the thing, right? When you have an anticipation of doing something, then you get the dopamine hit. So it becomes a cycle. So you can use this for bad habits. That's what really messes people up, and sticking with all these bad, practices and all this other stuff. And good habits, that's what keeps you motivated. We've basically done that, with our entire society. We have this anticipation of progress is good, right? You have a civilization-wide dopamine hit. Progress is good. And then we just started getting the dopamine hit at the idea of progress. Like, oh yes, we're gonna go to the moon. We're gonna build better computers, VR, all this other stuff, right? The idea of progress is now good. But that comes at the expense, right, of our health. When we lose track of that ability to be self-aware, then we just lose track of everything, of true progress. So yeah, I probably keep talking if I let myself. So let me end it here for real. So just to recap all this stuff, consider the idea that our current society is not really the best that we can do as a people. Consider the point that our technology might not even be the best implementations of what technology can be. Consider the idea that we have ample evidence of many different civilizations, the San people, the Aztecs, whatever, living for thousands of years at a stable place, healthy. They actually had less disease than we have today, right? They were more physically fit, more mentally healthy, as far as we can tell, um, in terms of being able to see like the types of things they created in their lives and the stories that they told. We have an idea that they were actually more happy, right? And we might even be able to test one day with these ideas of psychedelics that they might have had access to greater technological progress than we have today. They might have been able to, actually tell us whether or not we live in a simulation. They might have been able to explore beyond our reality. They might have been able to actually astral project beyond this planet. Whether or not you believe in that stuff, our science is showing that our reality is not fundamental. There's other stuff beyond that. And these civilizations maybe had access to that. Maybe they didn't actually fail. Maybe they transcended our material plane, or you hear that kind of saying going on. But maybe that's true, because there's a lot of these civilizations that just disappeared, and we have no, we can't find evidence of why they disappeared. Just consider it and look at the cost. Like if I'm wrong, then at least we would be going back to a point where we lived a better life as a society and as individuals. If I'm wrong, at least we'd be able to, have these fun experiences together more than we even do now when we call ourselves more connected than ever before. Because we know we're wrong now. We know, once again, that a lot of the stuff we're doing is unsustainable. It's going to come to an end. And most likely in our lifetime. So if we don't start doing some radical changes now, it might be it. So yeah, just consider some of these other ideas. Just consider what life could be like if you lived like the San people, if you had access to psychedelics, if you, were able to explore beyond this reality, if you were able to create technology directly from your imagination rather than through all these other tools that can barely, do what we want them to do most of the time. Imagine if we'd be able to keep our families safe and not have to worry about our kids living in the worst world than we lived in. Imagine if we just had a more fulfilling life as individuals and as people. Imagine that we can we can design a society that is almost guaranteed to exist for the next 100,000 years. Imagine never having to worry of whether or not your society will exist in the next decade or century. Imagine that. Consider that. So, with that said, thanks again for listening, for watching. And if you want to work, if you want to get to work, and if you want to chop wood, as my as Chris says, Christopher Lafayette, that I've talked about before. If you want to chop wood with me to start building this better future, to start figuring out how to sustainably bring us back to a better system, to bring us back to progress. If you want to work together, let me know. Hit me up. I'm working on something for this. Hit me up. You know where to find me at Elijah Cloud, ELIJACLAUDE on every platform. Close enough to Gmail, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Hit me up. Let's work. Let's chop wood. Let's make it happen. I believe we truly have what it takes to fix our society, to help us all live in a better society, live in a better reality. I believe we can do that within our lifetime, and I'm willing to show you how. I'm willing to work to determine and to create that reality. Whether you call me naive or whatever, it doesn't matter. That's what I'm willing to do. So if you're willing to do that too, let's go. Let's do it. There's been far more. Pretty sure Google seemed like it was very naive. People thought, hey, you can search, organize the world's information. Hey, you can get any package Amazon. You can get any package in a day or less from across the world, anytime, anywhere. Right? These ideas seem very naive and kind of stupid, right? Airbnb, Uber, all this quote unquote technology, right? They started with very ambitious, crazy ideas, and yet now it's normal. So let's really challenge ourselves here. Let's really live to our fullest potential and see if we can fix our entire society. Hit me up. Thanks for watching, listening. Bye bye.